Welcome to the Matriarchy. Hi, I'm Lisa, and we're with Kath today and some special guests. And I know, Kathy, that we're going to be talking today about a topic that you've been working long and hard for a long time on. And I'm excited to learn more myself and to meet your co-conspirators on this topic.
I am delighted that we can talk about healthy school start times, Lisa. So
Yeah.
thank you for giving us the opportunity to do this. And you're right, this is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. A lot of people advocate for a lot of things. I'm advocating for sleep. Sleep is really important and undervalued in our society. And so we'll get into like why sleep is important and specifically how school start times plays into the health of our adolescents. So I'm really excited to dig into this issue. I will say also that school start times is like the gateway drug for me for my advocacy. I started when my oldest was going into eighth grade, kind of had my aha moment of the role of school start times. And he just graduated from college.
Wow.
So this has been going on for a while. And, nationally, this has been going on for decades. So we can delve into all of that. But it was really like, this pet issue for me led to more involvement in the PTA, which led more involvement to the PTA council, which led me to meet more interesting and, cool people. And I like kept finding my people. And then my advocacy kept growing and it kind of grew into like I started with Red, Wine, and Blue and MEJC. And so you never know. You never know how your pet issue
Never
is
know.
going
Yeah.
to, grow and shape you. And, for me, it really forced me out of my comfort zone, to speak at board meetings and things like that.
I have to give you credit for sticking with it. I mean, it's been a lot of years that you've been fighting for this, so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think we're all fighting for something for a long
Yeah.
time, but honestly, I kept fighting because there's no reason not to. There's just
Time, sleep. No.
but the issue itself, there's like it's
I know. I agree.
irrefutable.
I agree. I
Um,
totally agree. I totally
so
agree.
anyway, well, let's get into it because
Okay,
I'm
let's
super
do it.
excited to introduce you
Yeah.
to my co-conspirators, my colleagues, my partners in crime, and my friends, Laura Humann and Hanne Hoffman. So I will start with Hanne. I'd like to introduce everyone to Dr. Hanne Hoffman. She is a research faculty at Michigan State University, and she studies how the body keeps track of time and how these rhythms change throughout life, including during puberty and pregnancy. She's an expert in the study of biological rhythms and the importance of sleep for well-being, mental health, and reproductive function, including puberty. She's also a chapter leader of Start School Later in Ingham County and has done a lot to advocate locally and is the mother of two school-aged kids. So welcome, Dr. Hoffman.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I would like to introduce our second guest today, Laura Humann. She is the chapter leader of Start School Later at the Wall Lake Consolidated School District in Michigan, and she's territory manager for SNAP Diagnostics. Laura has worked in sleep medicine and neuroscience for over 30 years as a technologist, pediatric and adult, product development specialist, project manager, and clinical research trial coordinator. She currently works in medical sales for a home sleep apnea testing company, and she's the mom to 3 girls in elementary and middle school. Welcome, Laura. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming,
thank
both of
you.
you. Yes.
I got to update it because they're now in middle and high school since
Oh, okay.
so yeah, mine are
Moving on
getting
up.
old as well.
So you're experiencing that high school sleep
Oh yes.
thing. Yes, yes.
So, Hannah, let's start with you. Before we get into the topic that we're going to talk about, I'd like to back up a little bit and talk about your advocacy and sort of your path and how you learned to use your voice. And, we're always curious about the people and influences that helped shape our guests. And were there any women in particular who inspired you while you were growing up?
Oh, that's a really good question. For me, the path has been kind of a self-discovery on the way. I'm a scientist. My life is research. And I study the rhythms in the body and have done a lot of work in puberty and now more focused later in life around primarily around pregnancy. I'm very interested in our family's health, not just the child, but also the mother and the whole family that comes along with it. And as a scientist, we often become too focused actually on the small things, and we sometimes forget that there's all these, of course, we impact society, but if we don't communicate to society what we're doing in a language that people can relate to and make it relevant to them, we don't get the word out. People don't appreciate what we do because we don't communicate. So it's really my realization that I was doing a poor job, along with a lot of other scientists, in actually helping the public understand why do we need to continue to do research in specific topics? Why do we need this to advance society and make it a better place and stop repeating errors? So for me, it was kind of, why do people keep on doing this, such as starting middle and high school very early in the morning, when we already know the science is out there that we shouldn't? So that kind of like made me think, well, why don't I do something? Why is it always someone else who needs to lead here? So that's kind of, I was just getting frustrated that we have legislation and school start times that are not appropriate or age appropriate. So I'm kind of stubborn. And so I just started. I went to speak with my school superintendent, and I'm still working with them on aligning my school district's start times to the children's needs. And with that, I started the County chapter, and then I met you guys among other amazing advocates. And it was kind of being with you and not doing it alone that made a big difference. I had never gone to the Capitol. I'm fortunate to being very close by, but for me, that was intimidating.
Yeah.
I I live in the US. I'm a US citizen, but I wasn't born here. So I also kind of felt initially like a little bit like an intruder, even though my kids are going to school here and my research is going to benefit everyone. So that was kind of personally something coming from the outside into a country, to go and tell people what to do. I felt very, very uncomfortable. And being with a group of local advocates really helped me to share my knowledge and advocate for all children and all families, because if your child is not doing well, the family's not doing well. So for me,
Amen.
my inspirational women are actually you two on this topic, because you really gave me the confidence to stand up as a group to advocate. So thank you.
Oh, that's
Well, and I will
wonderful.
say thank you for moving out of your comfort zone because I will say the same that I know you're not interviewing me, but um, but it's true. Like I was doing this alone for a long time. There was another chapter leader nearby, but unfortunately, circumstances were that she had to kind of drop out of advocacy a bit. But when I met you too, we really were able to do a lot more. And so, I think we learn a lot from people from other countries. And so thank you for pushing through your discomfort to advocate.
So, Laura, how about you? Tell us about the people, the women who shaped you and helped you find your voice.
Okay, so my initial introduction to advocacy was when I was probably in my early 30s. I worked at Children's Hospital and I had joined the board of directors of a foster care and adoption agency. And our director there, Vicki Johnson, was probably a very strong influence for me. She got me involved in advocacy. And we went, a couple board members and Vicki went to Washington, D.C. for the Child Welfare League's National Conference. And that was my first introduction to advocacy. We lobbied for a number of issues. And it was my first experience in actually just realizing that the people in elected office are doing the best they can and they don't know everything. And sometimes what you know in your experience in life is very valuable to shaping policy, to shaping decision making, to shaping the discussions that they have. And so I'll credit Vicki. I don't know where she is anymore. I've lost contact, but I remember her very vividly introducing me to this work. And then, then when this came about, when I realized, as my own children were going to be facing this issue of having to get on a bus at 6:40, my background is in sleep. sleep medicine, sleep science. I had this experience, in advocating, and I had some experience in organizing, political organizing. And so, I just realized that it was my voice that needed to be heard at this moment because I could come at it, as a parent, as well as someone who had knowledge about the science. Our initial meetings in Lansing, yes, I was a little more experienced than Hanne was, but I also felt very confident knowing I had a PhD scientist in the room with me, and all I had to do was open the door, get the meeting set up, open the door, and
Right.
let her talk. And she just brought so much credibility to it. And then Kath having, some experience and knowing people and knowing some of the connections, the three of us really were able to get some meetings and sway some conversations pretty early on. So, hopefully we can continue to advocate and present more reasons for change and work within the climate to make things happen.
So, did either one of you, like in your childhood, that helped sort of build your confidence or guide you? I mean, you became a scientist. Uh, so kind of what led you there? How did you decide to go that way?
Well, I didn't. It was kind of trial and error that brought
Okay.
me where I am. I grew up on a farm way out in the countryside. I'm originally from Denmark. And I would say what has made a huge difference from me is actually my mother, which she was a nurse for over 40 years. And
Oh,
I have three siblings, so a mother, four, and we had a farm. And it was mostly both her, but not only her, my dad as well, this unwavering support. Like I always knew they would have my back when I made the right decision and when I took a misstep. And I think for me, knowing I always had someone. I mean, I could always, especially call my mom. She would actually pick up, um, which my dad doesn't always do. Um, he would always be there. Even if I made a big error, I started a technical education after high school and didn't like it. And I dropped out, and there was no blame from my mom. She was like, okay, well, what do you want to do then? And she supported me in the decision I made, which turned out to be the right one for me because it kind of went one step along. I went to England as an au pair because I needed to improve my English because I had 6 months I needed to do something with. And I lived in this family, which actually turned out to be a Danish English family. And that was, welcomed in their house, and they helped me grow independence. And I moved again, trip, this time to France, and fell in love and stayed. And there's just been, it's not only women, a lot of them have been friends and women. But I would say in general, just the people supporting me and believing in me who were there when I needed some help. I have some friends, especially from college. There were two girls who were like sisters to me and still are. Unfortunately, only one of them are with me still, but with us, they kind of were there, and they just pushed me and they supported me. And I think for me, that's really made a difference. That when I didn't believe in myself, the imposter syndrome is very real. Today, you look at my CV, it looks very accomplished, but that doesn't mean that, especially as a woman, right? We don't always believe it. We also need to do more to get the same respect, especially, well, that's true in many fields. And so having these women and also just colleagues in general who would stand up for me made me believe in myself when I couldn't do it myself. And again, getting into start school later here in Michigan, most of our advocates are women. They're not exclusively women, but just seeing all mostly mothers who really wants to fight, and like we support each other. And I think for me, just having all this support network around me has helped me be comfortable, grow, and take chances, stepping out on thin ice
yeah,
and let it get thicker as I walked
yeah.
on.
That is so true. You won't take even the slightest risk without that support group, right? Like that's so important. So,
Yeah.
no,
And
that's
people
wonderful to
always
hear.
tell me, oh, you're so lucky you made it like that. I was like, well, it's not really luck. It's making something about the opportunities that present themselves to you, right? I moved to France. I didn't speak French. Like, don't think that was easy. Like the first year or
Right.
two, they were hard. But today people look at me and they're like, "Oh, that must have been so easy." I was like, "Nope,
So easy. You're like,
really
no.
easy." But I grew. I grew so much, and
Right.
now I know I can do it. So people, when they say, I'm lucky," I was like, "Yeah, I was lucky to have opportunities, but I also had the faith in myself to step up when they came."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
many people forget to take the opportunities that presents to them. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
not the right thing, but you need to try. Like right now, we're fighting for school start time, healthy learning hours, because that's really what it is. It's putting our children first and not putting parents or work schedules ahead of the health of our children. And even though people will listen and they'll say, yes, you're right. Oh, we have all these problems. Well, they're there to be, overcome. Many school districts have changed successfully for the better of the children, the school, and the families. You ask everyone.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to step down just because some people don't agree. It's usually people don't agree because they don't understand. And it's so important starting this conversation to explain, what can we do to help our children? This is actually a very easy fix. It will save lives. It will improve lives, both for the kids, but also for the families. I mean, my kids are becoming preteens, and we're starting to have the sleep change, the sleep delay, and they're getting moody, like just a normal moodiness, right? Right. I had
There's still hormones, no matter how much sleep you get.
Yeah.
That's it. We still have
Yeah.
hormones, but we don't need to amplify it. We don't need
Right.
to make it.
Right.
It doesn't have to be as hard as we
Right.
make it.
And you can
Yeah.
have moody, but also fun teenagers. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I was a teenager. I was moody. I had early school start times. Right. So,
We might not be able to get rid of all the moodiness of teens, but we can certainly set the stage for better outcomes. So, well, before we get into that, let's talk about you, Laura, and some of the influences from your childhood.
Well, this might be hard because my mom passed away earlier this month.
Oh,
But definitely a very strong influence, very supportive of me, very strong woman, strong-willed woman. You know, she was one of the founders. I have a twin sister, so she was one of the founders of the Michigan chapter of the Mothers of Twins Club. She helped organize conventions. She was a legal secretary. She raised 4 kids, my sister and I being the youngest, and was always there for us and always had our backs. And even getting into high school, was always there to advocate for us and what was in our best interest. I had some pretty influential elementary school teachers as well that I distinctly remember. Making me feel more confident in my skills and in my value. And, we were very involved in the church. So, I also have some memories of some of the women in our church group who, I admired and sometimes I think about as I'm, pursuing things.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So let's talk about healthy school start times. We've already been kind of like dancing around this, but what if we put a little bit more concrete answer around like why is this important? Let's dive into it a little bit. Who'd like to start? All three. Any of you? Who would like to start?
let's go to the doctor.
Okay.
oh my God, you're so funny. Ah, okay, I can start. So why is it important? Well, sleep is important. It's we spend over a third of our lives sleeping. We know children sleep,
Yeah.
like especially babies sleep a lot, right? Because when you sleep, your brain, well, your body clears out waste and you regenerate, right? Um, so it's really important. We all know if you sleep deprive a person, which Laura can speak a lot to, I'm sure, we get a lot of mental health problems. People can become like psychotic by not sleeping, right? And you reintroduce sleep and it all resolves. So we know sleep is so, so important for our well-being. But when we look at puberty, which is really a time where the brain finishes maturation, we have a big growth of neurons and like brain cells, right? During early childhood, everything grows, the brain grows. Puberty is the second spurt of growth of the brain. It's the second biggest one in your life, which means that you need a lot of sleep. Many people think that teenagers can get away with like 7 hours of sleep. That's not true. Because the brain is finishing its maturation and getting ready to figure out what is risky behavior, what is too risky behavior, right? This is the brain learning, and you were learning from error. what is a good decision, what is a bad decision. Well, for the brain to remember these experiences, it needs to sleep. You need to sleep for the brain to store all the input you get throughout the day, and you need to sleep in order for the brain to get like really become adult.
And to process the information
Exactly. We
too,
need, yep,
right? And have it like consolidate and make sense, right?
that's right. It's a little bit having a messy room. Just because it's all in there, if you can't find the information, it doesn't have value to you anymore. And this is exactly what happens when we are sleep deprived. You might have put in the information, but you're unable to recall it or to remember what you learned. And then you need to relearn it. So that's why sleep and learning go so tightly hand in hand. And when we sleep deprive someone, it takes you longer to learn, and you need more repetitions of the same thing. That's true for the school, it's true for sports, for music, for anything you do. If you don't sleep enough, it just takes longer to learn things.
Everyone knows that teenagers have a lot of hormones, right? What I found really interesting is when I learned that like when you mature, when you're a teenager, part of this hormone change is this melatonin that literally shifts in your body. Is that right? It makes
Yeah.
you fall asleep later. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so melatonin is sometimes called the hormone of the night. So it's a hormone we produce naturally, but it's only released during darkness at night. So we also need to turn the lights off when before bed or around bed, and keep them off during the night, because if not, we don't have melatonin. So melatonin, many people will take it to help promote sleep. It also helps you get through jet lag. So yeah, what happens in puberty is that we have, the physical changes, we have hormonal changes, and one of the hormones is the sleep hormone, and it actually gets released later in the day. So if you think about teenagers, it's a little bit like they take a sleeping pill about 2 hours later than the rest of us. So they're just not going to be sleepy until a couple of hours later than us. So even though we put them to bed and turn off the lights, their natural sleeping pill is not going to come. It won't come until later, simply because of the natural changes that are happening in the body of a teenager. So that's, yeah, our magic hormone is just delayed. And that also makes it hard for them to wake up in the morning, because it stays in the body until like early morning hours. So when you get it later, it also hangs around later, right? When you wake up. So if you wake up a teenager, they're super groggy because they still might have this hormone that tells their body to sleep hanging around. So that makes it, even if you put them to bed earlier, they're still going to be groggy in the morning.
So when you wake up a teenager at 6 o'clock in the morning, which sometimes we have to wake them up even earlier than that, that is equivalent to waking an adult up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And for anybody that's had to, wake up to catch a flight in the morning, or, had insomnia and woke up and couldn't get back to sleep, you do not function well that day. And, just think about those times and think that that's what we're doing to our teenagers 5 days a week, 9 months out of the year, and expecting them to learn, expecting them to, practice, managing relationships, and, expecting them to behave in the way we want them to behave, and not be irritable. I mean, it's such a high expectation, and we're just not setting the stage for them to succeed. We're really shortchanging them. They could do so much better. They could set their path for the future so much better and so much stronger if we just let them get more sleep.
So best case scenario, they're actually going to bed and falling asleep at 11, which when they're doing a sport and they're doing AP classes and doing all the things that we're asking them to do is a tall order anyway. And then say they're getting up at 6, which even at that, a lot of kids have to catch a bus at 6:10 in my district. That's about the earliest pickup. So really, you're getting up at 5:30. But even say it was 6, that's 7 hours. That's 7 hours of sleep. You're already at a 1 hour deficit from the minimum amount of sleep you need for healthy growth, right? And so you're already depriving kids of 5 hours a week. And that's in a best case scenario, which we all know the kids can't, they got the day that they have a track meet, they're not going to bed till 1, right? Because they also have an exam the next day. I think teens come across as like, oh, they're just lazy. And believe me, My kids are home this summer. They're driving me crazy. Love them. They're driving me crazy. And they are on their phones a lot. But I also know they work their tails off all year long. You know, they study, they're holding jobs, they're doing sports. And I think teens get a bad rap. And I think it's some of this is mimicked, it's echoed in the symptoms from this chronic sleep deprivation.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also think sometimes we kind of need to remind ourselves. We always talk about, oh, it's like, as Laura said, like having a teen wake up at 6, it's like us getting up at 4. But then we get like almost, oh my God, like if they go to bed at 11, but you kind of need to remind yourself 11 for a teenager is like 9 p.m. for us, right? Because the melatonin is delayed. So it's actually better, if anything, that they have those late evenings because, again, just because they go to bed early, they won't sleep. So that's really what can we change? We cannot change biology. We don't want to medicate people when we don't have to. We don't want to give our teenagers sleeping pills to overcome our biology. So, what is it we can do to help our teenagers? But also, I really want to emphasize the families because when you have an unhappy child, it really changes the home environment and it changes how we
Oh, yeah.
interact with our children. And I could definitely tell I have a preteen. She's very much behaving like a teen. And she is so much more agreeable right now because she's getting the sleep she needs. And I'm like having fun with my preteen daughter. And I'm like, oh my God, during the school year, and it's going to get even worse after summer break because she changes the school and she's going to have to go to school 45 minutes earlier. And she already said, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to speak with the school board. I was like, okay, so let's get it in writing. I was like, you need to stand up and speak to them because they care about you. And I think that's something we also, as advocates and parents, needs to, do. It's give our kids confidence to speak up. Again, I told at the start, you guys helped me find my public voice, if you like, my non-scientific voice, like the advocacy voice. And educating is a lifelong, mission. It's fun. It's fun to educate people. And we also need to give our children the confidence to speak up on their own behalf. They are citizens, they are active members of our community. And if we want them to feel heard in our community, we need to give them the confidence and the tools to learn to speak up. And I think, for example, school board meetings or just class or school meetings is a wonderful place that we can give to our children, which is a safe environment for them to speak up in. And it's an environment that has to listen to them because it's their home environment.
Student voices are so powerful. You know, I feel like when a student does speak up at a school board meeting, because it is pretty rare, right? But when they do, everyone in the room listens. You know, like really, it cuts through the noise. And like you said, this is their school. And this is a topic that kids get pretty passionate about, right? Because you feel the effects. It's like having jet lag every single day. Like that sucks. Like, and it doesn't have to be that way. So before we get into like the role that school plays, let's talk about what happens when you do get enough sleep. What are the benefits? Like academics, sports, physical and mental health. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if you get ample sleep, you have a lower risk of depression. You have a lower risk of suicide. You have, less chance that you'll be injured playing a sport. You can retain more of what you learn. You can be more creative, whether in art class or in writing class. You just bring, your full game. You're just more skilled at everything that you're doing, because your brain is then functioning at 100% instead of, at 60%. So everyone can relate to what it's like to not get sleep, and everyone can relate to what it's like to get a lot of sleep, like on vacation or summer break or whatever the situation is that you actually get more sleep. You feel better. You really do. And, we need to give that gift to our kids, throughout the school year to get their brains functioning at a higher level and have them be better at sports. Maybe they have a better chance at a scholarship for sports just by getting more sleep.
Yeah, I just want to follow up because in addition to everything else I'm also an athlete. And I'm very passionate about, balancing life. You need to learn to say no, right, to get your sleep and everything on your schedule. But so I love sports, I love my research, and I love hormones, right? And Laura brought up like, yeah, you have growth at night, and that's many people forget that the growth hormone, which does exactly what the name implies. It promotes growth. So it promotes growth when you physically grow, but it also promotes muscle growth. Sports are, they're important for social interaction, for physical and mental well-being, but they're also important for like how the school structure is set up in the US and scholarships. And what has been shown now, and if you go to any elite Olympic or other high level sports team, you will see they're going to advocate for sleep. And they advocate for sleep because if you sleep enough, you perform better, the concussion rates go down, right? When you are sleep deprived, your injuries are just way worse. The biggest predictor of getting injured during sports is sleep deprivation. It's not how many hours you perform sports, it's nothing else. It's if you slept. And I think that really needs, people should think about that. How much you sleep will determine if you're going to have a higher risk of getting an injury. That's a big, big deal.
That's
I mean,
amazing.
I do sports for the fun of it. I'm a little extreme in what I do. I'm an endurance athlete. But I mean, when my body is tired, I sleep because I know sleep will help me be a whole person again, right? And if I don't get sleep, I kind of physically or mentally fall apart. And our kids do the same. And because we have this big growth of the brain during the teenage years, and they learn so much in school, it's even more important. That said, you can actually shift your body's rhythms a little by doing sports in the morning. But I'm not saying that's going to be if you get up every morning, get sunlight. Sunlight is super important. Natural light. We're not talking about all little LED lights. Natural sunlight in the morning will also help us sleep at night.
Uh-huh. Michael Phelps is a huge advocate of sleep. He had a great quote. It was something like, we don't talk about sleep enough and the importance. Like that is like,
Yeah.
one of the biggest things he advocates for. So aside from sports and there's the academic, so it's not just like grades and test scores, which do improve. It's that's not really the reason that we're talking about this though. It is, of course, you're going to learn better when you are better rested, but it's other issues that, just to connect kind of some of the dots here is tardiness rates, graduation rates, and a big one, chronic absenteeism, which in Michigan and around the country is a huge issue. And so chronic absenteeism, if you're missing more than 10% of the school year, which is about 18 days, and these issues are all exacerbated uh, depending on your socioeconomic status, right? And so it's going to be more impactful if you live in a poor community. You might not have alternative transportation to school, right? Like in my district, our middle school starts at 7:25. Well, kids that live on the outer edge, you know, their parents drive them because they get an extra 45 minutes of sleep. Right? Like it's a lot. It's significant. But if for whatever reasons you don't have that structure or you miss a bus and you don't have another way to get to school, it's just going to add on. And I don't think school start times and the role of sleep is introduced enough into this conversation about absenteeism and what a huge problem it is and how this is such a foundational issue for our schools, like to really tangibly address a chronic problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an important topic. I mean, I also teach, right? I teach at the university level, but when you teach and the students don't show up 1 day per week, it's really hard as a teacher to make sure that the level of the class, that you can follow the curriculum and that students don't fall back. And another thing, absenteeism is a huge, missing block, what we often forget to talk about. Another thing is the teachers. The teachers are the ones who are with these sleep deprived children for 6 to 8 hours every day. So it's also important to think about how difficult it must be as a teacher to teach children who, number one, might not show up once or twice a week, come late and interrupt your class, and then are unruly. And again, delaying middle and high school start time is not going to make everyone become angels. I mean, that's not what I'm claiming. But teaching is, like I said, for your family, it's so much more fun. Like teenagers are fun. Yes, they have like risk taking. They can be like a lot, but who can't be a lot? Okay. But I mean, it's also like the joy of teaching. All the teachers I've met in the US are so passionate. You don't go in to become a teacher if you do not love it. It's a demanding job, it's many hours, and you get a different bucket of kids every year. But if we can help improve these dynamics by providing a cohort of students to these teachers that are fun to interact with, we might also see higher teacher satisfaction and more people who desire to become teachers, because you only hear about how difficult it is in the media to teach children, and we always blame it on all these other things, and we don't like, well, what if we did not sleep deprive our children? Could that potentially help these teachers actually accomplish what they joined this amazing job they have, could it help them stay in the job and really perform? And I do think, like what I've seen from surveys done on teachers in schools that have changed, they have a lot of positive feedback that it has simply become more enjoyable to teach and easier because you are trying to educate, or you are educating children who are ready to learn. And I think that's so important. It's also unfair to give these sleep deprived children to the teachers. I really think it's unfair for the teachers. We're putting them in the worst conditions to succeed.
Oh my God, my kid had math first hour.
I know.
Like, how can you learn math at 7:30 in the morning?
Uh-huh.
There were days he literally fell asleep. You can't teach kids who are asleep.
No, you can't.
Like, or so drowsy. We can talk about like the drowsy driving effects too. Like that's another one. I
Uh-huh.
queued it up for whoever wants to take that one.
So yeah, drowsy driving is a huge issue, right? So the problem with drowsy driving is that sometimes you don't even know it, right? You have these micro naps where you just close your eyes for like a second or two and then you wake back up. But in a car, a lot can happen in 2 seconds. And even though, in the US, you're not supposed to drink or take any kind of substance until you're over 21, that doesn't mean that you can't do it. And one thing I want to really emphasize that actually shocked me when I learned it is that if you have, and this is also for the adults, if you're sleep deprived and have one drink, it's equivalent to being drunk, a drunk driver. So sometimes you forget how other life decisions, such as having one drink and then staying up all night to party, even though that, yes, you can pass the alcohol test, you're actually a drunk driver because you will fall asleep when you're driving. And our teenagers, they are often chronically sleep deprived. So it's not just a little sleep deprived, like many of them get under 6 or 7 hours of sleep. So they're actually driving like a drunk driver. And
Yeah.
that should be a big concern to all of us for we know that there's safety, right? We know that teenagers have a lot of accidents. Well, a lot of those accidents, their cell phone, they're on their phones. Okay. But even before we had all the cell phones, teenagers had a lot of accidents in the car. And many of them are sleep related, that people are simply, young drivers are just too tired when they drive because of the imposed school schedule we have as a society put them in. I really think it's important, but also us as parents, that we go and speak up on their behalf.
Yeah, and even, as Hannah was saying earlier, I mean, their hormones are such that they have a higher level of melatonin still in their system in the morning when we're expecting them to drive. So, in addition to the sleep deprivation, they're just hormonally not ready to be up. They're not ready to be learning math. They're not ready to be doing the things that we're making them do. And, there are, a number of crashes that have happened in teens in the morning, in some cases across the country, fatalities. And it's sad, and we can do better. When I first got involved with the Start School Later, that was really the only data they had, was the data related to car crashes. And that was enough, to move a number of districts, to move a number of states, to start to consider that maybe we shouldn't be doing this. I mean, it's just something I say, this should be enough. Just the drowsy driving should be enough, but then we add on, the mental health issues. I know we probably want to touch on that, lower rates of depression and anxiety. Everybody's talking about these kids and the problems that they face after COVID, with their increased anxiety, higher rates of suicide. I mean, the data is so strong that just letting them sleep more can be probably one of the easiest and most effective ways to combat this crisis.
Yeah, and I think what we often forget is also when you sleep enough, you will, number one, you will learn quicker in class and you will actually have less homework. Because an argument I often hear is, oh, if we start later, they're going to be doing homework into the night. I was like, yeah, well, they can't sleep anyway, so it's kind of okay that they do homework later. But they're probably going to do the homework twice as fast. Imagine if you could cut that time in half. So even though if you delay school time by 1 hour and the kids can cut down 30 to 45 minutes of homework in the evening, they almost gained an entire, like you gave them time back to do other things, such as sleep, and you didn't take anything away. And we as a society just need to stop thinking about everything that is holding us back from doing it. No one likes change. Let's just put it out there. I don't like change. Um,
Even
it's
when it's good for us. We don't
even
like
when it's
change,
good for
even when it's
us.
good for us.
Right. We know we don't like change. We're resistant to change. We're comfortable with where we are. But sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, like for me to sometimes believe in myself and, step into these situations that require change, well, if we have this support network that helps us support through it, where for the school start time, I really think the schools and the parents should be the support network here. The schools needs to facilitate, right, and educate and have a conversation with options, potentially options, asking parents if they want to change school start times. Historically has not proven to be helpful in the sense that it's about 50-50. Some people say yes, some people say no. And when they answer, they think about their microenvironment. So your children grow. So right now, this year, my children have school start time at time A and B. In a year, it's going to be 2 different times. And I adapt because I know it's not an option. But then if they told me, oh my God, we're going to change these future school start times that are not even applied to you. And then people say, oh, that's not never going to work. You're kind of like, why not? Why not? Why wouldn't that work when you already adapted to different school start times almost every year when your kids grow up? Why can't we just change it to align the start time of the schools to when the kids can actually learn? And what is sometimes forgotten is that, especially when your kids get older, you might have forgotten that when they were younger, they would get up really early and go jump in your bed, right? That's what little kids do. They are up at 6. And we put them to school. My elementary school starts at 8:50. By then, my son
Why are
has,
we doing this?
right. He is so bored at home. He's running around. And he had all this opportunity to learn because he is so ready. And then I put him in school at 9, and by 1:30 or 1 to 2, he's done learning because he's been up since 6. He's been running like a little boy. He has been learning. And now his brain actually needs a break and his body needs a break. But he has to learn for another 2 hours. And I speak with the teachers at the school and they're like, yeah, we don't really do anything after. Like after lunch, we don't do a whole lot. That's a waste of teacher time.
Yeah. And for the ones that are in daycare in the morning because parents work and it's not practical to have elementary school starting at 9 o'clock, I thought that was the biggest nuisance. I'm like, why are we not starting these kids earlier?
Well, there's this hidden cost that it's invisible, right? And so we don't think about how we're already being inconvenienced because we've already adapted to it. And for a species that does not like change, we are remarkably adaptive.
Well, yes.
As COVID taught us.
As
Yes.
well, and that's a good point, Laura, because if COVID taught us nothing else, it's that we can change long entrenched systems when it's for the health of our population. So why aren't we thinking about this? Like we need to do better for our kids. We need to
Oh, we
do
do.
better.
So my
Yes.
question to you
Absolutely.
guys is, why aren't they? What are the reasons they give you?
Money.
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 Yeah, money. I figured that was the answer. But
The first question is really, why do we start school time the time of day we do? Right? Because historically, if you ask your grandparents, they did not start school at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. They did not.
Yeah.
They started school between 9 and 10 because people had to do things in the morning. They had potentially to walk a couple of miles to go to school. And so schools historically started later. Schools were also smaller. So you had more schools, so you didn't have to commute as far.
I have a guess. I have a guess why they do, but I don't
Okay,
know.
let me
You
hear.
guys are the experts, but my guess would be that they're recycling the same buses for the early
Yep, it's
folks
economic.
and then the
Uh-huh.
younger folks to save money.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. So it was for the busing. Then someone came up with the idea we needed bigger schools, which, okay, then the commute is longer. But yes, so and then the reason that we then historically started to start the high schools earlier was the idea that they are responsible and can wait for the bus alone. And that's it. And then we got stuck in this pattern. And what is so sad is that the time this was decided was about the same time that this very like keystone, a hallmark research study was done about sleep in children that demonstrated that it's internal, it's hormonal, it's not a choice. This research study was done back in the 70s. And as I said, my biggest error early on was I did not communicate I didn't take the time to go and speak with people and tell them, like, share what I learned with my research. And they didn't do a good enough job back then because if everyone had known, legislators could have made a better decision. But if we don't share our knowledge broadly and explain people why this is important, how it works, we can't expect people to make informed decisions.
Yeah. I mean, but it shouldn't even be legislators that have to get involved.
No.
Superintendents and school districts should just know to do this. There shouldn't have to be a law. I mean, that's one of the things we're pushing for in Michigan is just to educate, those who are capable of making the decision and doing this without any other intervention or any other requirement from the state, to do this without any legislation. Districts just need to do it because it's what's best for the kids. It's what's best for the families. It's what's best for, their rankings probably and
Well, and for
academic
the
scores
teachers.
and student and parent satisfaction. There are just so many reasons that districts need to do this. But, so bus drivers is always the other challenge. They want to have full-time employees in order to recruit them. There needs to be this long window of time in this three-tier system. So they're starting their route at 6 o'clock in the morning and finishing their route at 9:15. It's all to get the bus drivers, full-time status. For some districts, they'll come up with a lot of reasons. So I have a friend who, where she went to school, they have a late bus. So kids that stay and do after-school activities would actually have another option to get home, so parents wouldn't be, forced to maybe have the kids skip an activity or the opportunity to do something that they really want to do, which is probably very beneficial for them because the parents don't have a way to get them home at the end of that. So if the reason is the bus driver and you want the bus drivers to be full time, then add another tier at the end of the day, to transport kids that may not have opportunities otherwise to do some of the things that they want to do.
I went to high school in upstate New York, and we had a late bus, and it was great. I wonder if they still have that because of budget cuts, right? But it's an interesting thing that you talk about because we all know that there's a bus driver shortage. But let's think about this. If your day didn't start at 4 a.m. and it started later, these bus drivers have a hard job. I mean, really, you can get the same qualifications and earn more money and not have to deal with a busload of kids and be an Amazon driver or drive somewhere else with a commercial license. Like, we need to really rethink how we treat employees. And this is not an easy solution, but it's not necessarily throwing money at the problem. Money is what a lot of people say, but the truth is that there is a cost neutral solution for every district. The trade-offs might be something that you don't want. So maybe you put more money in so that you have, shorter, maybe you do have additional bus routes, but it's not always about the transportation. The three biggest pushback that we get are transportation, sports, and childcare. Transportation we've just talked about, but there are creative solutions. There are entire industries that are dedicated to solving these transportation issues. There are consultants that can look holistically at a district and be like, oh, well, as long as we're changing, bus times, what else do we want to do, right? Are we moving from trimesters to semesters, moving to block schedules? It is a complex issue, and I think that's why it's a little hard to address. So you talk about sports, and this is another thing that especially Laura and I live in the same county, and we've been talking to our Oakland ISD, which is the intermediary school district. So it's basically like a countywide umbrella for like just an easy explanation. There's all these school districts under this umbrella. Well, if you talk about, well, if we change, what's going to happen with sports, right? Well, there are ways to coordinate this. No one wants to do this alone. Hanno, you were saying you didn't want to do this alone and, you had support with us. I think superintendents are the same,
Oh, they
so you
are.
get other superintendents, you get other districts to work together to make this change. And I feel like we're just at that stage where this can fall like dominoes and have this really good effect.
I completely agree. And I mean, it takes a village, right, to raise a child, and that's it. We all need to get together to do it. And I think, as you said, we talk about the cost of changing school start time. Well, some schools who have done this without a cost, they've actually, it's not everyone, but some schools have actually been able to save money. And if you think the long-term picture here, not just again, our little world, our couple of years our children actually are in school, but what is the long-term economic benefit to the individual or the state when we have our children graduate from high school? So it's over 10 years ago now, there was a report done here in Michigan that looked at, well, if we change school start time in Michigan to align it with, what is recommended by pediatricians and many medical societies and teachers associations, that it shouldn't start before 8:30 for middle and high schoolers. I would even claim it shouldn't start before 9 based on the biology. That would allow a higher graduation rate. And I think the estimate was over the coming decade that Michigan would recover or gain, I think it was almost $1 billion in
More.
revenue.
It was like
Just when
2 billion in like 5 years. It was
it was
like
2.7.
that much. It was this
astronomical.
astronomical. And you think about, if we invest, let's say for the state of Michigan, even though there might not be a bill, but if the schools would have some money they could apply for, if they cannot make it a free change, if they needed some money to do it, let's say that the state puts in 100,000 million, 100 million. This 100 million, if that's going to turn into 2 billion in a couple of years, that's a really good investment. And this is an investment that is really worthwhile, both for the state economically, but also for the individual. When people have a job and can contribute to the workforce, that's a gain. It's a gain for the individual, it's a gain for the family, it's a gain for the state.
Yeah, it's an economic game. It's a recruitment strategy for getting companies to come to Michigan because we have higher graduation rates. It's such a huge factor, and I think it just takes people to make that connection, to connect the dots that you know better sleep means better education, better consistency for getting kids into the classrooms, higher graduation rates, stronger economy.
Yep.
Have you
That was
had some success in Michigan yet?
Yes, there are school districts that have successfully changed.
I think one of our clearest success stories, it's a small change, but Birmingham changed their school district later by 20 minutes for high school. And that came as a result of two people advocating independently, didn't even know of each other's effort. One was a student. Who at the time was a sophomore or going into his sophomore year, and the other was a sleep physician who went to the school board and said, you know, this is absolutely unconscionable that we have high school students in classrooms at 7:30 in the morning teaching them algebra. We had a couple of districts that changed as a result of the national effort and the messaging. Yeah, we are all working with our own districts and other ISDs and communicating to superintendents. I think we'll start to see some changes soon as a result of our efforts.
I know my kids actually did not go to Lake Orion schools, although we live in Lake Orion schools. And for a long time, they've had late start Wednesday. And I think it's because of this issue. So even though they don't start late, and it's only for high schoolers, it's not for the rest of the kids. So one day a week, they would start at 10.
So they can
That's
do
huge.
it.
They can do it. Yes,
So why
indeed.
don't we just do it every day and say maybe
Yeah.
9 a.m. so
I
they
don't
can?
know. That's a good question. Why not every day? Yeah,
Well, it's
yeah.
it's complex, right? So I would say like Dearborn changed of their own efforts is because the superintendent was a huge proponent, and so he took advantage of COVID and made it happen. So in my district in COVID, when we went virtual, I took it as a huge win that they didn't start school virtually until 8:30. It made the really hardest part of COVID much more bearable, because they just had to roll over and turn on the computer, right? Berkeley is another district that has changed. But I will say, we've talked to a lot of people. We've talked to administrators, we've talked to teachers and parents and students, and, it's 99.9% of people are like, absolutely, this is great. And what happens is you get stuck in the weeds, right? And I think it's not even money that's the biggest obstacle. It's status quo bias, right? Because you talk about, like, Laura, you talked about childcare. So the big three pushback that we get: transportation, sports, childcare, right? But around here, we have two-tiered elementary school. The second tier doesn't go till like 9 o'clock. That's crazy for working parents. Like, they're already being inconvenienced. It's just that that's just what they know. And so it's, even when change is good, like we talked about, it's hard to get people to do it. But when you have someone like in Dearborn that is a strong advocate that can actually push it through, like, sure, in Rochester, I'm a strong advocate, but I'm a parent. I'm not in charge of bus schedules, right? I'm not doing teacher contracts. I'm not, like, you need leadership to believe in this. And so if it's going to come at the district, you need to approach this as like, how do we implement? Not if we should, because everyone knows that we should. Everyone knows that we should. And if it were easy, they would have already done it. What you need is strong leadership, and to not do it well. I mean, you can do it alone. There's district, Berkeley did it alone. Dearborn did it alone. Their kids are still playing sports, right? The world hasn't fallen apart, right? um, so it can be done. I talked to people on the other side in Birmingham, the teachers union point of view. And so what they did is they took advantage of another big change in the district, right? They were going from trimesters to semesters. So there's ways to do this that make sense. And we want our districts to have this local control because every district is so unique, right? Some are rural and have huge bus routes, and some are like Berkeley, which is like a mile square or something, and so they don't have to deal with transportation. But if you have a state law, it'll require you to do it. But you can't just pass a state law. You need to help people get it done, because God bless our school districts, but how much more are we going to put on them? And to totally rechange like something that's going to affect. Now, this is the single biggest policy that that has the ability to benefit every student in the district, right? It can be the most effective tool in the toolbox to tackle mental health, to tackle sports, to tackle academic performance and sports performance and physical health and mental health and blah, 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 blah. But we need to provide support for our schools so they're not taking on a potentially controversial issue. And, well, if even if it's not controversy, it affects everyone. Every single person has an opinion because it affects them and their schedule.
But it's kind of funny, right? Because it really impacts you the year you adapt. And then you have your new routine. It's like the change we don't like because it's really the year where you need to rethink how you're going to do it. And I would say the year where you do change, what is important is really to prepare ahead of time. Many school districts who have done it successfully have seen the whole surrounding area really adapting to it. So you need to communicate. It's not like we have the same need. If the elementary school kids go to school earlier and are done later, this is going to be great for some families, but not as great for others. But right now it's the same. Some families really like it and some families don't. So we're just really going to have the same issue that we have right now. It's just going to impact a different part of the parents in a different way. So maybe instead of needing pre-care, we're going to have more children in the elementary school that might need after-school care. Or we could think about, can we introduce after-school activities the kids can sign up for that can be held at the school? Like my school, for example, they offer chess once a week, right? Would there be more activities where the kids could kind of learn something, have fun, and then the parents can come pick them up at 5, and then you don't have to take them to all these activities. It's kind of done with, and then you have more family time and actually more downtown. But it just takes a little creative thinking and saying, how can I make this change into an opportunity to improve what we're already doing? And often people just think about all the barriers instead of saying this is an opportunity to improve our offerings and the structure around the school day of what is available to the families and how we can enrich the learning experience and the whole experience for the families and the community.
What do you think, Lisa?
All right, Hannah, you go. What does the matriarchy mean to you?
For me, it's really so. I come from Europe. My husband is Spanish, and he's from a matriarch society, fishermen, where the women, because men were out away from the home. So for me, it's really like the woman is just seen for the role she actually plays most of the time, right? We do what we always do, but we're being recognized for it. For me, it's really more the recognition because we do all the work we do, independent of whether we get recognized for it. But for me, matriarchy is really that we recognize it and really kind of celebrate it. We need to celebrate every person's role in society independent of who we are. And I think for me, matriarchy, it's just that we remember to celebrate women for what we are.
I like that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and that it's women in control. I think of my mom was, the matriarch of our family. She was always a very strong influence in all of her I'm gonna have a hard time here. All of her nieces and nephews' lives, and we always referred to her as the matriarch. She was the glue that kept everything together, and that's what the women usually are. They're the glue that hold the families together. They're the glue that holds, what's important in our society together. They put forward the issues that need to be heard, and they come at everything with warmth and passion and a deeper intention than men do on everything. Put a woman in charge when we should have elected the last woman for president.
We agree. And now look at us.
Yep.
Okay. That was beautiful. Thank you both. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. This was a really, I mean, I feel like I know I was kind of quiet because I was just taking this all in and it was a lot of good information. I feel like I wanna know more. And I'm kind of at the end of it with my daughter. She's got one more year, but I'm thinking about it already. She's enjoying her summer and she starts at 7:45 starting in a couple weeks, mid-August. Yeah, it is rough. So thank you for your work. One of these days.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Just
We can do
educate
hard
her on the
things.
importance of sleep and, just try to do what you can to make the most of the situation. Ensure she's
A lot
getting
of
a lot of it.
naps. A lot
A
of
lot of
naps.
naps. Right. Naps are underrated.
We are a nap, naps are welcome here. So,
Yeah. as they
Yeah,
should be.
as it should be. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well,
All right.
thank you both. It's
Thanks,
been a
ladies.
pleasure having you guys on here, and I really appreciate, you guys taking me along for the ride too, online and off, and I appreciate your unwavering support and dedication.
Yeah, it's important work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Bye. That was good.
What'd you think?
Oh, it was excellent. They're so knowledgeable. You're all so knowledgeable. I'm just like kind of listening. Put
Well,
little
so
couple questions
like,
here or there. It was very good information, and not that I didn't know. I mean, of course I knew this. I'm on my third teenager. This is not anybody who's raised kids, teenagers knows that this is a big issue. And it is astounding that society has not embraced it because I do think that it would cost some money to like turn it over to that. But once you're there, once you're at a new start time, like it's just gonna be, part of the program, and it is just an adjustment both societally and economically, and then I think we can do this.
we could do hard things. Well, yes, I think some districts would definitely benefit from not only money but support to implement. But I was curious to know your thoughts on making the connections between, like, why are we picking on schools, right? Can't just kids go to bed early. Like the science of it, is that something that you were already familiar with and like
Yeah, yeah, I have been for some time. And even when my kids were in elementary school, like, I paid attention to all that. But I think, we adjust. We've always adjusted. I thought it was interesting when you were talking about the absentee rate, and with or without sleep, I've always been the type of parent, that has been pretty lenient if the kids needed a day off. Um, and my kids have always done well in school though, so that's never been a problem for them to catch up. But I could also see where other, like the idea of missing the bus for some kids, they don't have alternative transportation and that sort of thing. I could definitely see where sleep would like be a big issue for absenteeism. But yeah, I've always been aware of this, and we've just, like everybody else, you just work around it, right? I do think that if your kid is going to school, doing sports, trying to have a social life, working or whatever, I think there can be a breaking point for these kids, right? And again, we've tried to cushion our kids so they weren't in that situation. Um, and like I think I don't remember who brought it up, but some people can drive their kids to school and that gives them a little more, and that was me, right? I always drive the kids to school, part because we don't have a bus, but it would give them more time in the morning to sleep, more, I'd have the breakfast ready in the car, so they didn't have to take time at home to eat. We would do everything so they could sleep right up to the last minute. But it would be helpful if we didn't have to do it that way. So yeah.
to address your earlier point, it is an investment, but this is a one-time investment that
Right.
pays off. This is a
Right.
very good bang for your buck. A lot of superintendents who have done this will say that this was like the best decision that they made during their time as a school administrator. I'll also say that I don't think we really can have a serious conversation about how we address adolescent mental health issues without talking about chronic sleep deprivation. And the thing about school start times and why the connection between how much sleep that they need, because we all know, like, this is not rocket science. You have a good night's sleep, you feel better. Like, we all know, we've all experienced this in our day to day, right? But the connection that I think either gets lost in translation or people just don't know, right? I had a lot of people go, "Oh, I didn't know that," right? Kids hit adolescence, their hormones change, their melatonin releases later, they can't fall asleep before 11 or 12. And so, yes, healthy bedtimes are important, and that is the responsibility of the student and in the family, right? Yes, take the phone out of the bedroom, all of good sleep hygiene. But school districts are responsible for healthy wake times. And the reason this is important is because kids really need that like 5 to 7 a.m. REM sleep. That's when they go through emotional regulation and memory consolidation. They literally are learning and growing during that time. We are literally taking away their dreams when we make these kids
Yeah.
wake up before 7. We are. And that is just biology, right? And so I have 4 kids. Some of them, a couple of them struggled a lot more than others, right? And they get through it. But I have one son. He really struggled a lot. He just has a delayed sleep cycle, more even than your average adolescent. And so he'd get, he really was doing his best. But then he'd get in this cycle where he would get home and then take a nap, and then he couldn't wake up from that, and then it throws him in this cycle where he's not, now he can't fall asleep until much later. Like, we don't have to do this. And I think this is an equity issue. This is an issue that affects marginalized students, minority kids, economically disadvantaged kids are going to benefit way more. They're going to see more improved graduation rates, better attendance rates, serious decreases to absenteeism. California, they passed a state law 4 years ago. So this is their first year full. They had 1 year of implementation. Their chronic absentee rates went down by 5%, which statistically is pretty big.
Impressive. I'd be
Yeah.
interested in like when they were like how they're rolling it out though too, because I would think, you talk about like economic disadvantaged areas, school districts. I would think that they would be hit the hardest because I do think that a lot of those parents, both the parents are working and maybe they have to start quite early and they're really depending on different people. So they would need, I agree with what the doctor was saying is that, we adjust, right? We figure out how to adjust, but I think they might need a little extra help in like getting to that point. So I'd be interested to see what California is doing in terms of
Yeah.
that. And I do feel like that state's maybe a little bit more willing to spend some money on something like this. I do, just kind of like another side note, not directly related, but sort of related. We talk about different schedules. When I started my kids in elementary school in the Lake Orion School District, they had what was called focus schools. And so there was a year-round focus school, which was like different. So basically, you still got the same amount of time in the classroom, but they had shorter summers and more breaks throughout the year. And the families that went there just loved it. And there's a couple other like theme schools. One was more academic, and they had like multi-age classrooms, and then one was the arts, which is the one that my children went to. But when budget cuts came down through Michigan, guess what was the first thing to go? All those focus schools. So I think that's, we've already talked about money and schools, on our previous podcast. And I do think that Michigan needs to get better at funding. Like you said, if you're going to make a law, now you have to figure out how to help these schools, you know, make
Let's
that
invest in our
transition. And
kids.
again, once
Yeah.
they make it, maybe there is no extra money needed, but there probably will be in the beginning. So, yeah.
Michigan has a law, right, that school shouldn't start until Labor Day. If they could make that law, that is not in the best interest for our kids.
My kid's school doesn't follow that law. So go figure that out.
Yeah, well, most school districts now don't. I actually don't mind it. That's probably another podcast, another story,
Another,
but
but you're
it,
right. They can make laws. They are capable. But I do hear what the other ladies are saying, though, that it'd be nice if the schools could take it on themselves. But it is hard to take it on when you've got, parents who, even though eventually they might come to like this, it's going to feel hard at first, right? So,
yeah,
it would be it would be easier on the schools if it was just like, okay, the state made it mandatory, so we have to do this.
yes.
Don't blame us, kind of thing.
Right.
You know?
Yes. And I think when we first started, advocating statewide, that was kind of the bigger approach, is that like the school districts needed a little cushion because it was a bit more controversial. And then when COVID happened, well, all hell broke loose, right? And I
Yeah,
just, for me, I'm like, why couldn't we have
yeah,
taken advantage of building back a better system when we came
yeah.
back from that? But But that's what Dearborn
That's
did,
another
right?
podcast.
That is another podcast. But, when we know better, we do better.
Yeah.
And if we can offer support, and I think that the more parents and students, because Hannah, she mentioned students numerous times, and there was a student in Birmingham who was a strong advocate, and who's on our Start School Later Michigan, committee or organization, whatever. Um, and if parents can put a little pressure on districts and provide support, right, and say, like, we want this, we support you in doing this, then when all of the different voices are coming out, you're like, but this
Yeah.
is, it's
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like, I think school districts need to do what's in the best interest of the children. And so when you ask me at the front, why have I been doing this for this long? That's why, because there is no scenario where starting school at 7:30 is good for a student. There's just no scenario, scientifically speaking, except for well, I started early. Well, you know what? I did too. And I like, high school is hard, and I got out at 2:11. Well, who cares? I get out at 2:11 in high school. Like, that's too early.
It's too early. Yes. Just in
I
time
don't
to
know.
go home and watch the soaps. Back in the day.
General Hospital,
Not
Luke and
anymore. Now they can watch the soaps anytime they want, but for us, we'd have to, like, yeah.
I know, but
Um,
I like that we're talking about this as a foundational issue and
yeah,
how to really improve uh, student education and student experience. And it's better for the teachers and the school staff. Like, that means teachers get more sleep. It really does mean they get higher teacher satisfaction, like job satisfaction.
yeah. No, I agree. I totally agree. I'd love to see it happen. So you guys got to keep going.
Well, my
Of course, we're
youngest
not
is
gonna. My
only
kids will.
12.
Someday I'll have grandkids,
Yeah.
and hopefully they'll benefit from it.
Oh gosh, I hope by then, Lisa, we have this.
I hope so
Well,
too.
my youngest is going into seventh grade, so I have a good
You have a
six
chance.
years
So
of
this is a
like,
goal. This is a goal. You got
it's
to
a
get it
goal to get
before
this
she's
done. Like,
graduated.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I will say, if there's a school administrator out there listening, school board member, and you're like, I relate to this. Oh, I really, yes, yes. Please, we have find us. We will put our links in. It's Start School Later Michigan. We have a petition. We have a pledge that we put out there for anyone to sign. Parents, students, school administrators, teachers, whoever wants to see this happen. Then we have your information. And startschoollater.net is a national organization, international organization, nonprofit. Like, no one earns any money on this thing, right? I think now there's one paid employee, full-time employee, who's trying to get a grant to get more people paid. And these these women, the director, I told her that my son is in college, right? And I started when he was in eighth grade. She's like, I got grandkids. I'm like,
Been working on it
oh,
that long too.
she's been lurking on this a long time. And
Yeah.
so we have
Yeah.
resources, we have implementation resources. We had a whole conference last year. We have access to, transportation consultants. We have, you know, you don't have to start. We have blueprints, we have templates. You don't have to start from scratch. We have resources. And so I really do hope that if you're out there listening, whether or not you're in Michigan, that you contact startschoollater.net and find a local chapter or start a local chapter. You can always find, me or Lisa, through communications at envisionthematriarchy.com.
Reach right out
Find
there.
us. We're happy to help. Like I told you, I will talk. We will end this podcast because I will talk about this all day. And Lisa's like, I gotta go and make dinner.
Well, it was very, very good information. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for bringing your co-conspirators on. They were lovely, and they were,
They are fun.
yeah, very fun. All three of you are. So, all
We have a
right
good one.
then. I don't even know what podcast we're on. I feel like it's been a whirlwind. I was gonna do one of our.
This is
It's
8.
8? Okay,
I
okay,
think this is
we're
8.
getting there. We're almost
Yeah,
to, yeah, we're getting to that 10 mark.
that magic number.
So the magic number. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Kathy, for coming on, and Hannah and Laura. And please make sure that you follow and or subscribe, like, comment, do all the things to interact with us on any of the platforms that you may be listening to us on. We appreciate your support. We're also on social media. Share us with your friends and help us build the matriarchy. We would really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for staying with us, and welcome to the Matriarchy.
Welcome to the community.